The year was 2347, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for only 40 years. In the grand story of the universe, 40 years was nothing. It was a blink, a single breath, and to the ancient races who ruled the stars, humanity was exactly that, a brief moment. A small curiosity, a young species that had somehow stumbled into space and been allowed to sit at the edge of the great table where real powers made real decisions. Admiral Park Doyen stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic station called Eternal Accord. His uniform was perfect. His posture was straight. His face showed nothing. But inside, a fire was burning that threatened to consume everything he had ever believed about justice and fairness in this galaxy. Below him, through the massive windows, he could see the council chamber, a vast circular room where representatives from 100 different species gathered to decide the fate of worlds. Today, they were deciding the fate of 12 million human souls. 3 months ago, the Velrani Empire had attacked. Their warships had appeared above 3 human colony worlds without warning. They had not come to negotiate. They had not come to demand surrender. They had simply begun burning. Cities that had taken decades to build were turned to ash in hours. Families who had traveled across the stars seeking new lives found only death. 12 million people, men, women, children, gone in a single week of violence. And for what? The Velrani claimed the humans had crossed into their territory. They claimed it was a matter of honor. They claimed it was justice. Commander Yoon Sejin stood beside Do Yoon, her hands clasped behind her back. She was younger than him by 15 years, but she had already seen enough of the galaxy to lose most of her innocence. Today, she would lose the rest. "The council is voting now," she said quietly. Doya nodded but did not speak. He watched as the holographic displays flickered with the results. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy cast their judgment on the massacre of 12 million humans. The verdict came. The Velrani Empire would receive a formal reprimand. They would pay a small fine, an amount so tiny that the Velrani ambassador had probably spent more on his breakfast that morning. And that was all. 12 million dead. And the galaxy's answer was a slap on the wrist. Sujin's voice was barely a whisper. "This is justice." The Velrani ambassador was a creature called Thovax. He stood 8 feet tall, his body covered in hard black shell, his face a nightmare of sharp edges and clicking mandibles. When the verdict was announced, he turned to look directly at the human observers. His compound eyes glittered with amusement. "The humans should be grateful," Thovax said, his voice carrying across the chamber through the translation systems. "We could have taken more. We could have taken everything. Consider this a lesson. Next time, know your place." Several other delegates laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber like a disease. Doyon felt Sujin tense beside him. He felt his own heart pounding in his chest. Every instinct told him to scream, to rage, to do something, but he had been a soldier for 30 years. He knew that some battles were not won with anger. Without a word, he turned and walked out of the chamber. Sujin followed. They did not speak during the journey back to Earth. There was nothing to say. Both of them understood that something had broken today, something that could never be repaired. On Earth, President Kang Yoonji waited in the great hall beneath the mountains of what had once been called Korea. This was the heart of human government now. It's a place built to survive anything. Hidden from the eyes of a galaxy that had never truly welcomed them, around her sat the unified leadership of humanity. Every nation was represented. Every military commander, every scientist and strategist who mattered. They had gathered because they already knew what the verdict would be. The galaxy was predictable in its cruelty. When Doyan entered and gave his report, his voice was flat and empty. He told them about the verdict. He told them about Thovax's words. He told them about the laughter. When he finished, silence filled the room. President Kang was 57 years old. She had silver hair and eyes that had seen too much suffering. She had led humanity through famines, through plagues, Through the difficult years when they had first joined the galactic community and learned just how little they mattered to the ancient powers, they expect us to accept this, Doyen said. It was not a question, as President Kang replied. They expect us to bow our heads, to learn our lesson, to remember that we are young and weak and alone. She looked around the table at the faces of humanity's leaders. Some showed anger, some showed fear, but beneath all of that there was something else, something that had been growing for 40 years, hidden and patient, waiting for this moment. For 40 years, the president continued, we have watched and learned. We have studied their technology and found it lacking. We have analyzed their tactics and found them predictable. We have built in secret, planned in silence, and waited. They believe we are children playing at civilization. They believe we have only 300 ships and primitive weapons. They believe we will accept their contempt because we have no choice. Her voice grew hard. They are wrong. The orders were given. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, in shipyards that no alien sensor had ever detected. Machines that had been sleeping for decades began to wake. In orbital stations hidden in the asteroid belt, weapons systems that violated every treaty the Council held sacred powered up for the first time. Across human space, soldiers who had trained in secret for this very possibility received their orders. 1 hour later, a message was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. It reached the council chambers. It reached the Velrani homeworld. It reached trading posts and military bases and quiet colonies on the edge of known space. The message was simple. The United Earth government formally declares war on the Velrani Empire. In the council chamber, Thovax received the news. For a long moment, he simply stared at the display, his mandibles frozen. Then he laughed. War. He clicked. They declare war? With what army? With what fleet? He turned to the other delegates, still laughing. The humans have gone mad. This will be entertaining, at least. I give them 1 month before they beg for mercy. The other delegates joined his laughter. It echoed through the chamber. On Earth, President Kang heard their response. She smiled a cold, patient smile that held 40 years of suppressed rage. Let them laugh, she said. They will learn. The whole galaxy will learn. She turned to Admiral Park Do-yoon. Begin. The news traveled faster than light itself. Within hours of humanity's declaration, every corner of the galaxy knew. In the great trading halls of Kesher Prime, merchants stopped mid-deal to stare at their screens. In the military academies of the Dorvian hegemony, instructors used the announcement as a joke to lighten their students' moods. In 1,000 different languages, on 1,000 different worlds, beings asked the same question. Have the humans lost their minds? The Velrani Empire commanded 8,000 warships. Their soldiers numbered in the billions. They had conquered 17 species over the past 10,000 years. They were ancient, powerful, utterly certain of their place at the top of the galactic order. Humanity had been in space for less than 2 centuries. Their official fleet numbered 300 vessels. Their colonies were young and scattered. By every measure that mattered, they were prey, not predators. On Kasher Prime, the gambling houses opened new betting pools. The odds against humanity stood at 200 to 1. Most bets predicted the war would end within a single month. The only disagreement was whether the humans would surrender before or after their homeworld burned. Easy money, a Dorvian trader laughed as he placed his bet. The humans will be begging within weeks. But not everyone was laughing. In quiet rooms, far from the noise of the markets, certain individuals were watching with different eyes. Senior Intelligence Officer, Beak. Gigan had spent 15 years studying alien civilizations. She had learned their languages, read their histories, and analyzed their wars. She understood something that most humans did not. The galaxy's great powers had not fought a real war in over 3,000 years. She stood before Earth's War Council, displaying her findings on massive holographic screens. The room was full of generals, admirals, and strategists, the people who would plan humanity's survival or extinction. They underestimate us, Guion began. Because they measure strength the same way they always have? Fleet size, territory, age. By those measures, we are nothing. She changed the display to show recordings of past galactic conflicts. But look at how they fight. Their wars are rituals. They meet in agreed locations. They exchange fire until one side decides the cost is too high. Then they negotiate. Borders shift. Money changes hands. And life continues. Admiral Choi Sung-ho was the oldest person in the room. He had served in Earth's military for 50 years, starting back when humanity had not yet reached the stars. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp. They fight for advantage, he said slowly. We fight for survival. Exactly, Gen nodded. They have no concept of total war. They don't understand what it means to fight with everything you have, to accept any cost, to refuse surrender even when defeat seems certain. They think war is a game with rules. General Moon Jae leaned forward. She was 45 years old, brilliant and absolutely ruthless. Then we don't play their game, no, President Kong said from the head of the table. We play ours. The plan had been developing for decades. Even as humanity smiled and nodded and accepted their place as the galaxy's youngest child, they had been preparing. The official fleet of 300 ships was real, but it was a mask, a show for alien censors and diplomatic visitors. The true fleet was something else entirely. In shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt. In orbital stations camouflaged as mining operations. In underwater facilities on Earth itself, humanity had been building. They had studied every piece of alien technology they could access. They had found the weaknesses, the assumptions, the blind spots, and they had built weapons designed to exploit them all. Commander Shinhana toured one of the hidden shipyards with Admiral Park, Doyen, at her side. She was 32 years old, one of the youngest starship commanders in human history, and she had never seen anything like this. Row after row of warships stretched into the darkness. Not hundreds, thousands. They were sleek and angular, designed for speed and overwhelming firepower. They looked nothing like the clumsy vessels humanity showed to the galaxy. How long? She asked. 30 years of building, Doyan replied. We started after the first time the Council ignored human deaths. We knew this day would come. Hannah walked along the observation deck, looking down at the ships that would carry humanity's hope into battle. And the weapons? Doyan's expression darkened. The galaxy has rules about weapons. Limits on what can be built, what can be used. He paused. We followed none of them. Won't they condemn us? They already condemned us. They condemned us when they let the Velrani burn our colonies. They condemned us when they laughed at our dead, turned to face her. We will win this war, Commander. And then we will let the galaxy decide what to do about it. Back on Earth, Lieutenant Kim Tai-woo trained with his unit in one of the underground facilities that dotted the planet. He was 28 years old, born on Earth. Raised on the stories of humanity's struggle to find its place among the stars, his unit was special. Selected for the most dangerous missions. Trained in tactics that no alien had ever faced. They practiced in environments that simulated alien worlds, learning to fight in any gravity, any atmosphere, any condition. The Velrani are strong, their instructor told them. They are fast. They have fought 100 wars and won most of them. But they have never fought humans. They have never faced an enemy who will die rather than surrender. That is your advantage. Use it. Tai-woo listened and remembered the images from the colony worlds, the burning cities, screaming families, the mountains of dead. He thought about his sister, who had lived on New Busan with her husband and children. He had not heard from her since the attacks. He did not know if she was alive or dead. When do we move? He asked. Soon, the instructor replied. The Velrani think they have time. They think we will build up slowly, that they can crush us before we become a threat. The instructor smiled, a cold, hard expression. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Across human space, similar scenes played out. Ships launched from hidden bases. Soldiers loaded onto transports. Weapons were distributed, and systems were activated. Humanity was waking up, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. On the Valrani homeworld, Admiral Thovax assembled his invasion fleet. 2,000 ships, crewed by the finest warriors in the Empire. It was more than enough to crush humanity's pathetic 300 vessels. More than enough to teach these upstart mammals their place. We will burn Earth itself, Thovax promised his officers. We will make an example that the galaxy will remember for 10,000 years. His ships jumped to light speed. Heading for human space, they expected easy prey. They found something else entirely. The Valrani armada arrived at the human colony of New Busan, expecting fire and screaming, and the sweet taste of easy victory. 2,000 warships dropped out of lightspeed in perfect formation, their weapons hot, their crews eager for blood. They found nothing. Admiral Thovax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, his compound eyes scanning the empty space before him. The planet was there, blue and green and white, just like Earth. But there were no defense platforms. No fleet, no resistance of any kind. Where are they? Thovax clicked, his mandibles working with confusion. Where is their fleet? His sensor officer hunched over his station, running scan after scan. Nothing, Admiral. No ships. No weapons, signatures, nothing. One of his officers laughed nervously. They must have fled. They heard we were coming and ran like the cowards they are. Thovax wanted to believe that. Every instinct told him that was the answer. Humans were weak. Humans were afraid. Of course they would run. But something felt wrong. Something in the silence. Something in the way the stars seemed to watch them. Admiral, the sensor officer said, his voice suddenly strange. I am reading ... something. Energy signatures. Very faint. Where? Everywhere. Space tore open. That was the only way to describe it. One moment, the Valrani fleet floated alone in the darkness. The next moment, the darkness itself came alive. Ships emerged from places that should have been empty, from asteroid fields, from the shadows of moons, from hidden positions that no Valrani sensor had detected. Not 300 ships, 3,000. And behind them, something larger. Massive carrier vessels, each one nearly a kilometer long, bristling with weapons that glowed with contained fury. Commander. Shin Hannah sat in the captain's chair of the battleship Righteous Storm. Watching the Valrani fleet through her tactical display, she could see their ships spinning in confusion, trying to reorient. Trying to understand what was happening, she smiled. All units, she said, her voice calm and cold, weapons free. The human fleet fired as one. Thousands of weapon systems activated simultaneously, sending streams of destruction toward the enemy. The Valrani had never seen anything like it. Their shields, designed to handle conventional galactic weapons, failed almost instantly under the assault. Admiral Thovax watched in horror as the ships around him began to die. The crushing tide, a destroyer that had served the Empire for 200 years, vanished in a ball of fire. The pride of Valrani, a cruiser crewed by 1,000 warriors, broke in half under concentrated fire. Return fire. Thovax screamed. Return fire. His ships tried. They launched their own weapons, targeting the human vessels with everything they had. But the human ships moved like nothing the Valrani had ever seen. They were fast, impossibly fast. They seemed to know where Valrani weapons would fire before they fired. They slipped through gaps in the barrage, turning and spinning with a grace that made the Valrani ships look like clumsy beasts. On the bridge of the Righteous Storm, Hannah watched her tactical display update in real time. Human ships moved in patterns that had been drilled into them for years. They worked together like a single organism, each vessel knowing exactly where to be and what to do. Target their command ships, she ordered. Destroy their ability to coordinate. The human fleet obeyed. Strike wings broke away from the main formation, driving deep into the Valrani fleet to target the largest vessels. One by one, the Valrani command ships began to fall. Admiral Thovax felt his ship shudder as a human weapon struck his shields. The lights flickered. Alarms screamed. Admiral, we must retreat. his first officer pleaded. "We cannot win this fight." Thuvox looked at his display. Half his fleet was already gone. Ships that had served the Empire for centuries were nothing but expanding clouds of debris. And the humans, the weak, pathetic humans, were still coming. "Impossible," he whispered. "This is impossible." He gave the order to retreat. The surviving Velrani ships turned and ran, jumping to light speed as fast as their drives could carry them. Of the 2,000 ships that had come to New Busan, fewer than 400 escaped. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the human fleet held the field, surrounded by the wreckage of the greatest military defeat in Velrani history. On Kesher Prime, the gambling houses went silent. The betting boards flickered and went dark. No one was laughing anymore, but the humans did not stop. Admiral Park Do-yeon commanded the push into Velrani space. His strategy was simple. Move fast, hit hard, never give them time to recover. The galaxy expected humans to consolidate their victory. To dig in and prepare for counterattack instead, humanity attacked. Strike fleets appeared throughout Velrani territory, hitting targets seemingly at random. Supply depots burned. Communication relays went dark. Defense platforms were destroyed before they could fire a single shot. The Velrani tried to respond. They gathered their remaining fleets, hoping to catch the humans in a decisive battle. But the humans refused to fight on Velrani terms. When Velrani forces gathered, human fleets vanished. When Velrani forces spread out to protect their territory, human ships appeared and destroyed them piece by piece. Lieutenant Kim Tai-woo led a ground assault on the Velrani military headquarters on the moon called Third Voice. His unit of 200 soldiers landed under heavy fire. Fighting through defenses designed to stop an army 10 times their size, the Velrani defenders numbered 5,000. They had bunkers and artillery and air support. By every measure, the humans should have been crushed. The fighting lasted 18 hours. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found Tai-woo and 37 surviving soldiers holding the Central Command building. The rest of his unit was dead, but so were 4,000 Velrani soldiers. "How?" a Velrani prisoner asked, his voice broken with disbelief. "How did you do this?" Tai-woo looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death in too short a time. He thought about his sister. He thought about New Busan. He thought about 12 million names that would never be spoken again. "We don't know how to surrender," he said simply. Within 3 months, the human fleet stood at the edge of the Velrani home system. Behind them lay a trail of destroyed bases, shattered fleets, and broken armies. Ahead lay the heart of an empire that had ruled the stars for 10,000 years, the Velrani. Emperor broadcast a desperate plea to the Galactic Council. "Stop them. Please, in the name of all that is sacred, stop them. They fight without honor. They show no mercy. They are not warriors. They are monsters." The council received his message. They read it. They discussed it, and they did nothing. Because for the first time in 3,000 years, the great powers of the galaxy were afraid. Not of the Velrani. Not of each other, of humanity. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest in 3,000 years. Every species sent representatives. Every power block demanded to be heard. The great chamber, designed to hold hundreds, was packed with thousands, all of them watching, all of them afraid. High Arbiter Molketh floated at the center of the chamber. He was ancient beyond measure, being of light and energy who had guided the council for longer than most species had existed. In all his years, he had never seen anything like this. "Order," he called, his voice resonating through translation systems in 100 languages. There must be order. The Dorvian delegate would not be silenced. He stood on his platform, his scaled body trembling with rage and fear. "They have destroyed 40% of the Velrani military in 3 months, he shouted. 3 months. This was supposed to be impossible. We were told humans were primitive. We were told their technology was inferior. We were told we were wrong," the Kishari delegate interrupted quietly. She was a small being, covered in soft fur, known for her wisdom and calm. Today, Even she looked shaken. We were all wrong. The chamber erupted in argument. Species that had been allies for centuries turned on each other, blaming one another for the situation. Some demanded immediate intervention against humanity. Others argued that any intervention would bring human wrath upon them. Through it all, Ambassador Minje sat in humanity's seat, the small seat at the back of the chamber. Far from the center where the real powers gathered, he had held this position for 20 years. For 20 years he had smiled and nodded and accepted every insult, every dismissal, every casual cruelty that the galaxy threw at humanity. Not anymore. He rose to speak. The chamber fell silent, not out of respect, but out of shock. The human ambassador had never asked to speak before. He had never interrupted the great powers. He had known his place. "You must intervene, High Arbiter," Mulkeith was saying. "If humanity defeats the Velrani completely, the balance of power will be destroyed. The stability we have maintained for 3,000 years will collapse. The balance." Minje's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "You speak of balance?" He walked forward, leaving the small human seat behind. Each step brought him closer to the center, closer to where he was never supposed to stand. Where was this concern for balance when the Velrani burned our colonies? Where was this precious stability when 12 million of our people died screaming? He looked around the chamber at the hundreds of delegates. "I was here. I begged you for justice. I pleaded with this council to act. Do you remember what you did?" Silence. You laughed. You told us to know our place. You find the Velrani an amount so small that it was an insult to the dead. He reached the center of the chamber, standing where no human had ever stood before. High Arbiter Mulkeith floated above him, but Minje did not look away. "You built a galaxy where strength is the only thing that matters. You taught us that lesson for 40 years. So we became strong." And now he looked at the Dorvian delegate, at the Kishari, at all the species who had laughed at humanity. "Now you are afraid," the Dorvian delegate found his voice. "You cannot speak to us this way. We are the species that just destroyed the greatest military power in the galaxy in 3 months," Minje said flatly. "I will speak however I choose." On Earth, President Kung Yeon-ji watched the session through a secure feed. Around her, the War Council monitored reports from across human space and beyond. General Moon Jae presented the latest intelligence. The council is divided. Several species want to form a coalition against us. The Dorvians, the Valranis, remaining allies, a few others who fear what our victory means for their power. And the others? President Kang asked, afraid to move. Some are quietly reaching out through back channels. They want to know our intentions. They want to know if we plan to stop with the Velrani, or continue. The president considered this. The temptation was there. Humanity had spent 40 years being kicked and laughed at. They had built a weapon capable of reshaping the galaxy. It would be so easy to use it to punish everyone who had ever looked down on them, but that was not why they had fought. "We are not conquerors," she said quietly. "We never wanted to rule the galaxy. We only wanted to be treated as equals." Admiral Park Doyan nodded. "Then we need to show them that. Not just tell them, show them." Back in the council chamber, Minje continued. A Velrani delegate, one of the few remaining, after so many had died in the war, stood to speak. "The humans are monsters," the delegate said, his voice broken. "They do not fight with honor. They strike from shadows. They refuse surrender. They show no mercy." Minje turned to face him. "Your people came to our worlds in the night. You burned our cities without warning. You killed children in their beds." His voice was cold but controlled. "And when we begged the galaxy for justice, you laughed in our faces. You told us to learn our place." He stepped closer to the Velrani delegate. "So we learned. We learned that in this galaxy, mercy is weakness. We learned that honor is just a word the powerful use to control the powerless. We learned that the only language you understand is violence." Paused, letting the words sink in. "You taught us that lesson. Every species in this chamber taught us that lesson through 40 years of contempt and cruelty. Now you call us monsters because we learned well? The chamber was silent. High Arbiter Mulkith finally spoke. What does humanity want? Name your terms for peace. Min-Jae looked up at the ancient being. We want justice. Real justice. We want the Velrani to answer for their crimes. We want the council reformed so that no species, no matter how young, no matter how weak, can be slaughtered while the galaxy watches and does nothing. And if we refuse, Min-Jae smiled. It was not a warm smile. Then we will build a galaxy that provides these things, with or without you. After he left the chamber, the debate continued for hours. Alliances formed and broke. Threats were made and withdrawn. Species that had been friends for millennia suddenly eyed each other with suspicion. But slowly, a truth began to emerge. The old order was finished. Humanity had not just defeated the Velrani, they had shattered the illusion that the galaxy's great powers were unbeatable. Every species that had ever been bullied, exploited, or ignored was now asking the same question. If the humans could do it, why not us? The Galactic Council had ruled through fear for 3,000 years. Now that fear had a new target. On Earth, President Kong received reports of the chaos spreading through galactic politics. She watched footage of the council session. Of Min-Jae standing where no human had ever stood, speaking words no human had ever dared to speak. It's working, General Moon said. They're fracturing. The coalition against us is falling apart. President Kang nodded slowly. Then it's time for the final phase. Time to show them what we really want. She authorized the orders. The human fleet at the edge of the Velrani home system began to move. The human fleet appeared above the Velrani homeworld, like a dark cloud covering the sun. 3,000 warships hung in perfect formation, their weapons pointed at the planet below. Behind them, the wreckage of the last Velrani defense fleet drifted in silence. Admiral Park. Do-Yan stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, looking down at the world that had ordered the deaths of 12 million humans. From orbit, it was beautiful green countenance, blue oceans, white clouds swirling in delicate patterns. A world very much like Earth. A world he could destroy with a single command. Admiral, his communications officer, said, "We are receiving transmissions from the surface. The Velrani Emperor is requesting to speak with you." Put him through. The holographic display flickered, and the face of the Velrani Emperor appeared. He was old ancient by Velrani standards, his shell cracked with age, his compound eyes clouded. He had ruled for 200 years. He had watched his empire grow and prosper. Now, he watched it die. "Human," the Emperor said, his voice a dry whisper, "I am prepared to negotiate." Do-Yan shook his head. "We are past negotiation. We are here to accept your surrender." Surrender. The word seemed to cause the Emperor physical pain. The Velrani have never surrendered. In 10,000 years? In 10,000 years, you have never faced us. Do-Yan leaned forward. Your fleets are destroyed. Your armies are broken. Your allies have abandoned you. Look at the sky, Emperor. Look at what hangs above your world. This is not a negotiation. This is a choice. Surrender, or watch everything you've built turn to ash. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was hollow. What are your terms? You will publicly acknowledge the crimes committed against humanity. You will pay reparations to the families of the 12 million. Your military will be dismantled to a fraction of its current size. And the officers who ordered the attacks on our colonies, including Admiral Thovaxel, be surrendered to face justice. This is humiliation. This is consequences. Something your species has never faced before. Do-Yan's expression did not change. You have 1 hour to decide. Transmission ended. On Earth, President Kang watched the exchange through secure channels. Around her, the War Council waited in tense silence. Do you think they will accept? General Moon asked. They have no choice, the President replied. The question is what comes after. She turned to face her advisors, the men and women who had guided humanity through the darkest for months in their species' history. We have won the war. Now we must win the peace. 1 hour later, The Velrani Emperor broadcast his surrender to the galaxy. His voice cracked as he read the terms, acknowledging crimes his people had committed, accepting punishments his empire had never imagined facing. When he finished, he simply stopped speaking. The transmission ended in silence. Across the galaxy, beings watched in stunned disbelief. The Velrani, the mighty Velrani, who had conquered worlds and crushed civilizations, had been brought to their knees by a species that most had never taken seriously. But what happened next shocked the galaxy even more. The human fleet did not land. They did not occupy. They did not burn the Velrani homeworld in revenge for the colonies that had been destroyed. Instead, they withdrew. Ambassador Ominje addressed the Galactic Council one final time, standing in the center of the chamber as if he had always belonged there. Humanity did not fight this war for conquest, he said. We did not sacrifice our sons and daughters to build an empire. We fought because we had no choice. Because the galaxy showed us that the only way to earn respect was through strength. He looked around at the assembled delegates at species who had ignored humanity, laughed at humanity, left humanity to die. We have shown our strength. Now we will show something else. He outlined humanity's demands. Not territory, not tribute, but reform. A new galactic council, where every species had a voice. Laws that protected the weak from the strong. Real consequences for those who committed atrocities. Some of you will resist these changes, Minjay acknowledged. Some of you will try to rebuild the old order. But understand this. Humanity remembers. We remember every insult, every dismissal, every life lost while the galaxy watched and did nothing. We remember, and we are patient. He paused, letting the words sink in. Work with us, and we can build a better galaxy together. Stand against us, and we will do what we must. The choice is yours. The reforms did not come quickly or easily. Old powers resisted. New alliances formed and dissolved. The galaxy was in chaos for months, as the balance of power shifted and settled. But slowly, things began to change. The Tirani Collective, oppressed for 3 centuries, formally allied with humanity. The Kashari merchants shifted their trade routes toward Earth, seeking the protection and partnership of the galaxy's new power. Even some of the Dorvians, those who were wise enough to see which way the wind was blowing, began sending diplomatic inquiries. A new seat was added to the council chamber, not at the back, where humanity had sat for 40 years. At the center table, where the great powers gathered, Ambassador Ominje took his place there, surrounded by beings who had once looked down on his species with contempt. None of them were laughing now. On Earth, in a memorial garden overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Park Doyan stood before a monument. It was a simple thing, a wall of black stone etched with 12 million names. The names of those who had died on the colony worlds, the names of those whose deaths had started a war. Commander Shin Hanna found him there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The council has ratified the reforms, she told him. All of them. It's over. Doyan did not turn from the wall. Is it? Hannah stood beside him, reading the names. So many names. So many lives ended too soon. Did we do the right thing? She asked. It was the question that had haunted Doyan since the war began. The blood on his hands, the ships he had destroyed, the lives he had taken. Was it justice? Or was it just revenge wearing a noble mask? I don't know, he admitted. I know we did what we had to. I know that if we had done nothing, the galaxy would have continued to ignore us, to use us, to kill us whenever it was convenient. He finally turned to look at her. But I also know that we became something dark during this war. Something I hope we never have to become again. Lieutenant Kim Tai-woo joined them, walking slowly through the garden. He had been promoted 3 times since the assault on Third Voice. They called him a hero now. He did not feel like one. General Moon sent me, he said. The last Velrani war criminals have been surrendered. Admiral Thovax will face trial next month. Doya nodded but said nothing. Justice, after all this time. Justice. But it did not bring back the dead above them. Human ships patrolled the skies alongside vessels from a dozen different species. Former enemies now flew as uncertain allies. Throughout the cosmos, beings who had never heard of Earth now spoke of it with a mixture of fear, respect, and hope. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something more difficult. They had changed it. What happens now? Hannah asked. Doyen looked at the sunset, at the memorial, at the names of the 12 million who would never see what their deaths had accomplished. Now comes the hard part, he said. Now we have to build something worth all this sacrifice. A galaxy where what happened to our people never happens again. Where the strong protect the weak instead of preying on them. Where justice means something. He turned away from the memorial, facing the future. That is how we honor them. Not with monuments or ceremonies. With the world we build. The stars were coming out now, one by one, filling the darkness with light. Somewhere out there, on 100 different worlds, beings were watching Earth and wondering what humanity would do next. The answer was simple. The same thing humanity had always done. Survive, adapt, build, dream, and never ever forget, on the monument beneath the 12 million names. A single inscription glittered in the fading light. We came in peace. We were met with contempt. We offered friendship. We were answered with blood. So we taught them a lesson written in fire. Humanity kneels to no one. The galaxy had learned. The galaxy would remember, and humanity would make sure they never forgot.